The desperate proposition. Victoria Sterling adjusted her worn laptop bag as she climbed the stairs to her shared apartment in downtown Portland. The rain had soaked through her jacket during the bus ride home, and exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders after another unsuccessful job interview. Her marketing degree felt worthless when every position required 5 years of experience she didn't have. The small apartment she shared with her best friend Alina was quiet when she entered. Alina worked evening shifts at the local hospital as a nurse, leaving Victoria alone with her thoughts and mounting bills. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother back in Cedar Falls, asking about the rent money Victoria had promised to send. Her father's medical bills from his recent heart surgery were crushing their small family farm. Victoria stared at her bank account balance on her phone screen. $237. That was all that stood between her family losing their home and somehow making it through another month. She had applied for over 50 jobs in the past 2 months, but nothing seemed to work out. Her phone rang, displaying an unknown number with a Seattle area code. Normally, she would let it go to voicemail, but desperation made her answer. Victoria. Sterling, the voice was crisp, professional, and distinctly male. Yes, this is Victoria. My name is David Kim. I work for Cross Dynamics Corporation. We received your resume through our recruitment database, and we have an urgent position that might interest you. Victoria's heart skipped. Cross Dynamics was one of the largest tech companies on the West Coast. Their CEO, Nathan Cross, was regularly featured in business magazines as one of the youngest billionaires in America. What kind of position? She asked, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. It's unconventional, David said carefully. The compensation is substantial, but the role requires complete discretion. Would you be available to meet tomorrow morning in Seattle? We can arrange transportation. Victoria looked around her tiny apartment at the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter, at the photo of her parents on their struggling farm. Yes, I'm available. Excellent. A car will pick you up at 7 a.m. The meeting is with Mr. X. Cross personally. After David hung up, Victoria sat in stunned silence. Nathan Cross wanted to meet with her personally. It seemed impossible, but she had nothing left to lose. The black sedan that arrived at 7 a.m. was more luxurious than any car Victoria had ever been inside. The driver was polite but quiet during the 3-hour drive to Seattle, leaving her to wonder what kind of position would require such elaborate arrangements. Cross Dynamics headquarters rose into the Seattle skyline like a glass and steel monument to success. Victoria had seen it in photographs, but experiencing it in person was overwhelming. The lobby alone was larger than her entire apartment, with marble floors and modern art installations that probably cost more than her college tuition. David Kim met her at the security desk. He was younger than she had expected, maybe early 30s, with an efficient manner and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mr. Cross is waiting upstairs, he said as they entered a private elevator. I should prepare you this meeting might not be what you're expecting. The elevator climbed to the top floor, opening directly into a reception area that offered panoramic views of Elliott Bay through floor-to-ceiling windows. Victoria could see ferries crossing the water and the Olympic Mountains in the distance. Ms. Sterling. The voice came from behind her, deep and surprisingly warm. She turned to find Nathan Cross himself approaching from a corner office. Victoria had seen his photos in magazines, but they didn't capture the presence he commanded in person. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair that looked like he had been running his fingers through it. His suit was perfectly tailored, but his tie was loosened, and there was something in his green eyes that seemed tired despite his confident posture. Thank you for making the trip, he said, extending his hand. When their fingers touched, Victoria felt an unexpected jolt of electricity. His handshake was firm but brief, as if he too had felt something unexpected. Please, sit down, he gestured, toward a seating area with leather chairs arranged around a low table. David, could you give us some privacy? Once they were alone, Nathan seemed to study Victoria's face as if trying to solve a puzzle. The silence stretched between them until he finally spoke. This is going to sound insane, he began, running a hand through his hair. I need to ask you something that will change both of our lives. Victoria's mouth went dry. What kind of question? Nathan stood and walked to the windows, his back to her. My company is facing a hostile takeover. The board members are questioning my ability to lead because of my personal life, or rather, my lack of one. They think I'm too young, too reckless, too focused on innovation instead of stability. He turned back to face her. Not permanently, just for show. A marriage contract that will satisfy the board and the investors that I'm settling down and becoming the stable CEO they want to see. Victoria stared at him, certain she had misheard. You're asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to enter into a business arrangement, Nathan clarified. 1 year? You would live in my house, attend social functions, play the role of the supportive wife. In return, you would receive $5 million. The number hit Victoria like a physical blow. $5 million would save her family's farm pay, for her father's medical treatment, and give her enough financial security to pursue any career she wanted. Why me? She managed to ask. Nathan returned to his chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Because you're not part of my world. The women I usually date are either gold diggers or social climbers who would never agree to a temporary arrangement. You have a clean background, you're educated, and frankly, you need the money enough to take this seriously. His bluntness should have offended her, but Victoria appreciated his honesty. Public appearances as my wife, living in the same house. To maintain the illusion, separate bedrooms, of course, no physical relationship required. Nathan's voice was businesslike, but Victoria noticed the slight flush in his cheeks when he mentioned the physical aspects. And after 1 year, clean. Divorce, you keep the money, I keep the company, and we both move on with our lives. Victoria's mind raced. It was insane, but the alternative was watching her family lose everything. I need time to think about this. I understand. It's a lot to process, Nathan said, his voice softer now. But I need an answer within 48 hours. The board meeting is next week. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. This contains a more detailed contract outline and a check for $50,000. Consider it a signing bonus regardless of your decision. Victoria took the envelope with trembling hands. Why are you being so generous? For the first time, Nathan's professional mask slipped, revealing something vulnerable underneath. Because I know what it's like to have everything riding on one decision. And because something tells me you're the kind of person who keeps her word. The decision, the ride back to Portland, passed in a blur. Victoria clutched the envelope like a lifeline, barely believing what had just happened. The check inside was more money than she had ever seen at one time. Even if she said no to the marriage proposal, this would solve her family's immediate crisis. But the marriage contract itself was far more complex and detailed than she had expected. It outlined living arrangements, public appearance requirements, and confidentiality clauses. Most importantly, it specified that the arrangement was strictly business, with severe financial penalties for either party if they violated the professional boundaries. Alina was waiting when Victoria arrived home, her nurse's scrubs replaced by comfortable pajamas and a concerned expression. Where have you been? I was worried when you didn't answer my texts all day. Victoria realized she had never returned. Alina's messages. The whole day felt surreal, like something that had happened to someone else. I might have a job opportunity, Victoria said carefully. A really unusual one. Alina raised an eyebrow. Unusual how? Victoria couldn't bring herself to explain the full situation. Instead, she showed Alina the check. Her friend's eyes widened as she counted the zeros. Victoria, what kind of job comes with this much money up front? You're scaring me? It's legitimate, Victoria assured her. Just very unconventional. That night, Victoria lay awake staring at the ceiling. Nathan Cross's green eyes kept appearing in her memory along with the moment when their hands had touched. There had been something electric in that brief contact, something that suggested this arrangement might be more complicated than either of them anticipated. Her phone buzzed with another text from her mother. The bank had called about the farm's mortgage they had 2 weeks before foreclosure proceedings began. Victoria closed her eyes and made her decision. The next morning, she called David Kim. I'll do it, she said simply. Mr. Cross will be pleased, David replied. Can you be in Seattle by this weekend? We'll need to begin preparations immediately. I'll be there. As Victoria hung up the phone, she wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or taking the first step toward changing everything. What she didn't know was that Nathan Cross was asking himself the same question, and that their arrangement would challenge everything both of them thought they knew about themselves. Within hours, David had arranged 4 movers to pack Victoria's belongings and transport them to Seattle. The efficiency was overwhelming: wedding dress shopping with a personal stylist, legal documentation, even a brief media training session to prepare her for public appearances. Everything moved so quickly that Victoria barely had time to process what she was agreeing to. The civil ceremony took place on Friday afternoon in a small courthouse in Seattle. Nathan wore a charcoal gray suit and looked every inch the successful businessman, but Victoria noticed the tension in his shoulders and the way he kept checking his watch. This was just another business transaction for him, she reminded herself. Victoria's dress was elegant but simpler, cream-colored sheath that the stylist had chosen to photograph well for the society pages. She felt like she was playing dress-up, pretending to be someone she wasn't. The ceremony itself was brief and formal. When Nathan slipped the wedding ring onto her finger, Victoria was surprised by how warm his hands were, how gentle his touch. For a moment, their eyes met, and she saw something flicker in his expressions. Surprise, a recognition of something neither of them had expected. "You may kiss the bride," the judge announced. Nathan hesitated for just a moment before leaning down to brush his lips against hers. It was meant to be perfunctory, just for show, but Victoria felt the same electric shock she had experienced during their handshake. They pulled apart. Nathan's eyes were darker than before, and Victoria felt her cheeks flush. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Cross," David said, taking photos with his phone. "These will be perfect for the press release." As they signed the marriage certificate, Victoria's hand trembled slightly. Nathan noticed and placed his hand over hers for just a moment. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Victoria nodded, not trusting her voice. She was officially married to a man she barely knew, entering a world she had never imagined being part of. But for the first time in months, she felt hope instead of desperation. "The car is waiting," David announced. "Your flight to Vancouver leaves in 2 hours?" Victoria looked confused. "Vancouver?" "Our honeymoon," Nathan explained, his voice carefully neutral. "Just for the weekend. We need to be seen together, establish the relationship in the public eye." The word honeymoon hung awkwardly between them. Victoria had almost forgotten that part of their arrangement they would need to convince the world that their marriage was real, that they were genuinely in love. As they rode to the airport, Victoria stared out the window at the Seattle skyline. In the space of a week, her entire life had changed. She was no longer Victoria Sterling, the unemployed marketing graduate struggling to make ends meet. Was Victoria Cross, wife of one of the most successful men in America. The question was, who was she really, and what would this arrangement cost her in the end? Playing house, Victoria's hands trembled as she stood before the imposing iron gates of Nathan's estate in the exclusive Bellevue Hills. The Mediterranean-style mansion sprawled across manicured grounds, complete with a circular driveway and fountain that belonged in a movie rather than real life. Her single suitcase felt pathetic in comparison to the grandeur surrounding her. Nathan opened the front door himself, surprising her. He wore dark jeans and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than during their business meeting. Casual attire made him seem more human, more approachable. "Welcome home," he said, the word home hanging awkwardly between them. Neither quite knew how to navigate this strange new reality. The interior of the house was stunning, but felt cold, like a museum display rather than a place where someone actually lived. High ceilings, marble floors, and expensive artwork created an atmosphere of wealth, but not warmth. "Your room is upstairs," Nathan said, leading her up a grand staircase. "It has its own bathroom and sitting area. You should have everything you need." The guest suite was larger than Victoria's entire apartment had been. A king-sized bed dominated the space, flanked by French doors that opened onto a private balcony overlooking the gardens. Despite its luxury, something about the room felt lonely. "The master bedroom is at the other end of the hall," Nathan explained, keeping his distance, as if afraid to get too close. "We each have our own space, our own privacy." Victoria nodded. She couldn't shake the feeling that all this space between them was more about protection than privacy. "There's a dinner party tomorrow night," Nathan continued, his voice returning to its businesslike tone. "Some investors and board members. It will be our first public appearance as a married couple." The reminder of their arrangements settled over them like a cold blanket. We're playing roles, nothing more. The dinner party was an exercise in control. Victoria wore a navy blue dress that David had selected, elegant but not too flashy, expensive but not ostentatious. She practiced her smile in the mirror, rehearsing the story they had agreed upon. A whirlwind romance, love at first sight, a private wedding because they couldn't wait. Nathan introduced her to a parade of Faces board members, investors, their wives. Victoria smiled and nodded, playing the part of the devoted new bride. She noticed how Nathan's hand would find the small of her back when they moved through the crowd, how he would lean close to whisper in her ear, creating an illusion of intimacy that felt surprisingly natural. "Your wife is charming, and older." Board member's wife commented to Nathan, "You seem very happy together." "I am," Nathan replied, his arm tightening around Victoria's waist. "She's changed my life." The words were part of their script, but something in Nathan's voice made Victoria look up at him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, she forgot they were acting. "Well, you certainly seem more settled than before," the board member himself chimed in. "Perhaps marriage is exactly what you needed to focus on the company's future," Victoria felt. Nathan's tension eased slightly. The performance was working. But as the evening progressed, Victoria began to notice things that weren't part of the act. The way Nathan's laugh sounded different when he was genuinely amused versus when he was being polite. How he unconsciously moved closer to her when he was nervous. A small scar on his left hand that he traced with his thumb when he was thinking. After the guests left, they stood in the foyer, suddenly alone again. The silence felt heavy with unspoken thoughts. "You did well tonight," Nathan said finally. "Very convincing." Victoria hesitated, then added, "This house is beautiful. But it doesn't feel like anyone lives here." Nathan's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "I'm not here much. Work keeps me busy." "What about before? Didn't you ever want to make it feel more like home?" "Home is a concept I'm not familiar with," Nathan replied, his voice cool. "This is just a place to sleep." Victoria saw something flicker in his eyes, pain, perhaps her loneliness. Before she could respond, he was already turning away. "An early meeting tomorrow. Good night, Victoria." "Good night," she whispered to his retreating form. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine. Nathan left early for work and returned late, often after Victoria had already gone to bed. They attended social functions together, playing their roles perfectly. At charity galas and business dinners, they were the picture of marital bliss. But at home, they were like polite strangers, sharing the same space. Victoria threw herself into decorating the house, adding warmth and personality to the sterile rooms. She filled vases with fresh flowers, arranged books on empty shelves, and hung family photos in the hallway. Nathan never commented on the changes, but she noticed he had started spending more time in the living room rather than hiding in his office. One evening, Victoria was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Nathan arrived home earlier than usual. He stood in the doorway looking surprised to find her there. "You don't need to cook," he said. "We have a meal service." "No," Victoria replied, not looking up from the vegetables she was chopping. "But I like to cook. It relaxes me." Nathan lingered in the doorway, as if unsure whether to leave or stay. Finally, he stepped into the kitchen. "What are you making?" "Pasta with roasted vegetables." "Nothing fancy." Victoria glanced at him. "You're welcome to join me if you'd like." Nathan hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." As they ate together. At the kitchen island, Victoria realized it was the first real conversation they'd had since the wedding. Nathan asked about her family, her childhood, her dreams. She found herself telling him about growing up on the farm, about her father's stubbornness and her mother's quiet strength. "What about you?" Victoria asked. "What was your childhood like?" Nathan's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Not worth discussing. Everyone's childhood is worth discussing. Trust me, mine isn't." Nathan's tone was final, but Victoria caught the flash of pain in his eyes. She didn't push, but she filed the information away. Nathan Cross, the confident billionaire, had secrets. And despite their arrangement, despite the walls he had built around himself, Victoria found herself wanting to understand the man behind the public persona. That night, as she lay in her oversized bed, Victoria realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about the money anymore. Somehow, without meaning to, she had started to care about Nathan Cross. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Walls come down. The breakthrough came 3 months into their arrangement, on a rainy Thursday evening when Victoria found Nathan in his office, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered papers. He looked exhausted, his usually perfect hair disheveled, and his tie long since discarded. "The board meeting is tomorrow," he said without looking up when she appeared in the doorway. "They're still pushing for the merger? Some of them think I'm too young to handle the company's future." Victoria had learned not to intrude on Nathan's work, but something about his posture, the way his shoulders sagged with defeat, made her step into the room. "You'll convince them," she said simply. Nathan laughed bitterly. "Will I? 3 months of marriage, and I'm still the same reckless CEO in their eyes? Maybe they're right, they're not." Victoria moved closer, noting the dark circles under his eyes. "When was the last time you slept? Or ate something that didn't come from a vending machine?" "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Victoria sat down across from him. "Talk to me, Nathan. What's really going on?" For a moment she thought he would shut her out again. Then something in his expression cracked, and the words came tumbling out. "My father built this company from nothing. He died when I was 22. And I inherited everything: the business, the responsibility, the expectation that I would be just like him." Nathan's voice was raw. "But I'm not him. I make decisions based on instinct, not just profit margins. I take risks he never would have taken. And now they want to merge with Blackstone Industries, turn everything he built into just another corporate entity." Victoria watched his hands tremble slightly as he reached for his coffee cup. "What would your father want?" "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "We weren't close. He worked 8-hour days, traveled constantly. I barely saw him when I was growing up. My mother died when I was 8, and after that, he just disappeared into his work." The pieces of Nathan's carefully constructed walls began to make sense. The empty house, the reluctance to let anyone close, the complete focus on business. He had learned from his father that emotional connections were weaknesses to be avoided. "I'm sorry," Victoria said quietly. "That must have been incredibly lonely." Nathan looked up at her, surprised by the genuine empathy in her voice. "It was just the way things were. It doesn't have to be the way things are now." Their eyes met across the desk, and Victoria saw something shift in Nathan's expression. Professional distance. He maintained the professional mask he wore even. "At home, it all began to crumble, Victoria," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This arrangement we have, it's getting complicated." "I know." Victoria's heart was racing, but she forced herself to stay calm. "It's complicated for me too." Nathan stood up abruptly and walked to the window, his back to her. "When I proposed this deal, I thought it would be simple, a business transaction. Nothing more, but you've changed everything. How you made this house feel like a home. You ask about my day, you cook dinner, you leave books on the coffee table and flowers in the hallway." Nathan turned to face her. "You care about me, and I don't know what to do with that." Victoria rose from her chair, taking a step toward him. "What do you want to do with it?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger. They both knew that crossing this line would change everything's the contract, the arrangement, their ability to walk away unscathed at the end of the year. Nathan moved toward her, closing the distance between them. "I want to forget about the contract," he said, his voice rough. "I want to forget about the money and the board and the company. I want to kiss you because I can't stop thinking about you, not because we're putting on a show." Victoria's breath caught. "Nathan." "Tell me to stop," he said, reaching up to cup her face in his hands. "Tell me this is a mistake, and I'll walk away right now." But Victoria didn't tell him to stop. Instead, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, pouring months of suppressed feelings into that single moment. This kiss was nothing like the perfunctory peck they had shared at their wedding. This was desperate and honest and full of longing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "This changes everything," Victoria whispered. "I know." Nathan rested his forehead against hers, Are you afraid? Terrified, Victoria admitted, but not of you. Of this, of how much I care about you. Nathan pulled her closer, and Victoria felt the last of his walls crumble. I've never let anyone this close before, he confessed. Do this? We'll figure it out together. They held each other in the quiet of his office, the rain pattering against the windows. Victoria realized that somewhere in the midst of playing house, she had fallen in love with her husband. The realization should have scared her, but instead it felt like coming home. The next morning, Nathan left early for his board meeting, but not before stopping by Victoria's room to say goodbye. He looked different, lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Wish me luck, he said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. You don't need luck, Victoria replied, straightening his tie. You need to remember who you are and what you've built. Don't let them intimidate you. Nathan smiled, and Victoria realized it was the first completely genuine smile she had seen from him. Thank you for everything. After he left, Victoria paced the house nervously. She had called in sick to her new part-time job at a local non-profiter position she had taken to. Give herself something to do during the day. The work was fulfilling. But today she couldn't concentrate on anything except Nathan and the board meeting that would determine the future of his company. Her phone rang at 3 in the afternoon. Nathan's name appeared on the screen. How did it go? Victoria asked without preamble. I voted to reject the merger, Nathan said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. By a narrow margin, but they voted with me. I'm Thompson, the board member, who's been pushing hardest for the merger. He pulled me aside afterward. He said I seemed more focused lately, more settled. He thinks marriage has been good for me. Victoria laughed. Well, he's not wrong. No, he's not. Nathan's voice grew serious. Victoria, I want to talk to you about the contract, about what happens next. What do you mean? I don't want this to end after a year. I want to renegotiate. Victoria's heart stopped. Renegotiate how? I want to tear up the contract entirely. I want to start over not as business partners, but as husband and wife. For real this. Time. Victoria sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Nathan, you don't have to. I'm not doing this because I have to, Nathan interrupted. I'm doing this because I love you. I love your kindness, your strength, the way you see the good in people, even when they don't see it in themselves. Love that you turned my house into a home, that you make me want to be better than I am. Tears sprang to Victoria's eyes. Love you too, she whispered. Then marry me, Nathan said. It's really marry me. Not for the board, or the company, or the money. Marry me because we choose each other. Victoria was crying now, happy tears that she couldn't seem to stop. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Again. When Nathan came home that evening, he found Victoria waiting for him in the living room, still in her pajamas, with tear-stained cheeks, and the biggest smile he had ever seen. So, he said, sitting down beside her on the couch, I have a confession to make. What's that? I've been in love with you since that first dinner we cooked together, maybe even before that. Nathan took her hands in his. I was just too scared to admit it. What changed you did? Showed me that love doesn't have to be a weakness, it can be a strength. Nathan brought her hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. You showed me what home really means. Victoria leaned into him, feeling safe and loved and completely at peace. So what do we do now? Now we throw away the contract. And start writing our own story, Nathan said. That doesn't have an expiration date. As they held each other on the couch, Victoria realized that their arrangement had given them both something they had never expected to find. A love that was real, deep, and lasting. The contract marriage had been just the beginning of their real love story. New beginnings 1 year later, Victoria stood in the garden behind their home, watching Nathan play with their golden retriever puppy, Max. The dog had been Nathan's idea, surprise he had brought home one evening with a sheepish grin, and the admission that he had always wanted a pet but had never felt settled enough to care for one properly. You've changed me, he had said that night, watching Max explore every corner of the house. You've made me want things I never thought I could have. Now, as Victoria watched her husband laugh at the puppy's antics, she marveled at how much their lives had transformed. The cold, sterile mansion had become a warm, lived-in home. Nathan had learned to delegate more at work, making time for evening dinners and weekend adventures. And Victoria had discovered her own strength, launching a non-profit organization that helps struggling families avoid foreclosure, a cause close to her heart. Mrs. Cross. David Kim's voice interrupted her thoughts, approached from the house. Carrying a folder, I have the final papers for you to sign. Victoria smiled at Nathan's assistant, who had become a good friend over the past year. Thank you, David. Inside the folder were the official documents dissolving their original contract marriage. Nathan had insisted on making it legal, removing any traces of their business arrangement and replacing it with a marriage certificate that reflected their true feelings for each other. I still can't believe you two are having another wedding, David said, shaking his head with amusement. Most people only do this once. Most people don't fall in love with their contract spouse, Victoria replied, signing her name with a flourish. Nathan jogged over, Max at his heels. His face was flushed from playing, and his hair was disheveled in a way that made Victoria's heart skip. Even after all this time, he still had that effect on her. All signed? Nathan asked, wrapping his arms around Victoria from behind. Signed, she confirmed, leaning back against his chest. We're officially divorced from our business arrangement, and tomorrow we'll be officially married for love, Nathan murmured, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Their second wedding was everything their first had not been. Instead of a sterile courthouse, they exchanged vows in the garden where Victoria had first seen Nathan truly relaxed. Instead of a business transaction, they spoke words they had written themselves, promising to love and support each other through whatever life brought them. Victoria's family had flown in from Cedar Falls. Her father, healthy and strong after his recovery, walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. Her mother had spent the morning fussing over Victoria's dress, a flowing white gown that made her feel like a princess. Lena was her maid of honor, alternately crying and laughing as she watched her best friend marry the man she had fallen in love with. Nathan's side was smaller, but no less meaningful. His college roommate served as best man, and several board members who had become genuine friends attended. Even Thompson, the board member who had once doubted Nathan's stability, was there with his wife, beaming with approval. You know, Thompson had said during the reception, I was skeptical about your marriage at first. Thought it was just a publicity stunt. But anyone can see how much you two love each other. Marriage has been the making of you, Cross. Nathan had smiled, his arm tightening around Victoria's waist. She's been the making of me, he had agreed now. 6 months after their real wedding, Victoria was putting the finishing touches on their newest project, a nursery. She ran her hand over her growing belly, still amazed at how quickly their lives had changed. The pregnancy had been a surprise, but a welcome one. Nathan had been over the moon when she told him, immediately starting to plan everything from the baby's college fund to the color scheme for the nursery. You know, we don't have to decide everything right now. Victoria had laughed when she found him researching pediatricians at 3 a.m. I just want to be prepared, Nathan had said, pulling her onto his lap. I want to be the kind of father mine never was. Victoria had kissed him then, tasting the promise in his words. Nathan would be an amazing father. She had no doubt about that. He had already transformed from the lonely, guarded man she had first met into someone who embraced love and family with his whole heart. Victoria? Nathan's voice called from downstairs. Are you ready? She took one last look around the nursery, imagining their child playing here, growing up in a house filled with love and laughter. Then she made her way downstairs, where Nathan was waiting with the keys to their new car, a sensible SUV, to replace his impractical sports car. Ready for our appointment? He asked, offering her his arm. More than ready, Victoria replied, as they drove to the doctor's office for their 20-week ultrasound. Victoria reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. What had started as a desperate business arrangement had blossomed into the deepest love she had ever known. Are you hoping for a boy or a girl? Nathan asked, his free hand resting on her belly. I just want the baby to be healthy, Victoria said, covering his hand with hers. Though I have to admit, I keep picturing a little boy with your eyes. Nathan smiled. Keep picturing a little girl with your determination. God help me if she's anything like you, I'll never win another argument. They laughed together, and Victoria marveled at how natural this felt. Marriage, pregnancy, building a life together, it had all happened so organically that sometimes she forgot their unusual beginning. The ultrasound revealed they were having a daughter, and Nathan cried when he saw her tiny face on the screen. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "She looks just like you." "She has your stubborn chin," Victoria teased, wiping away her own tears. That evening, they sat in the nursery, assembling the crib Nathan had insisted on putting together himself. Victoria watched him carefully follow the instructions, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration, a habit she had grown to love. "Nathan," she said softly, "do you ever regret it? The way we started?" Nathan looked up from the crib, his expression serious. "Never. Not for a single moment." He moved to sit beside her on the floor. "I used to think love was a weakness, something that made people vulnerable and foolish. But you showed me that love is actually the strongest thing. It changed everything about who I am." Victoria leaned against his shoulder. "I was so scared that first day I met you. I thought I was selling my soul for money. Instead, you saved mine," Nathan said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You saved us both." They sat in comfortable silence, surrounded by the evidence of their love. The nursery they had decorated together, the home they had built, the life they were creating. Victoria thought about the frightened young woman who had climbed those stairs to her Portland apartment 2 years ago, desperate and alone. That woman could never have imagined this happiness. "I love you," Nathan said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "I love you too," Victoria replied, the words still giving her the same thrill they had the first time she said them. As they finished assembling the crib, Nathan told Victoria about his plans to establish a foundation in his father's name, one that would help young entrepreneurs get their start without sacrificing their personal lives the way his father had. "I want to break the cycle," he explained. "I want other people to know that success doesn't have to mean loneliness." Victoria smiled, her heart full. This was the man she had fallen in love with, not the cold businessman from their first meeting, but the warm, caring person who had been hidden beneath years of protective walls. 3 months later, Victoria woke Nathan in the middle of the night, her hand pressed to her belly. "It's time," she said simply. Nathan was instantly alert, switching into the efficient mode that had made him successful in business. He grabbed the hospital bag they had packed weeks ago, helped Victoria to the car, and drove carefully to the hospital, his hand never leaving hers. Their daughter, Emma Rose Cross, was born just as the sun was rising, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces. She had Nathan's dark hair and Victoria's determined expression, and she was absolutely perfect. "Hello, beautiful girl," Nathan whispered, holding his daughter for the first time. Tears streamed down his face as he looked at Victoria. "Thank you for everything. For her, for us, for showing me what love really means." Victoria smiled through her exhaustion, watching her husband hold their daughter with such tenderness. "Thank you for taking a chance on a desperate girl with a marketing degree. Best business decision I ever made," Nathan said, leaning down to kiss her. "Though I'm pretty sure the business part ended the moment I met you." As they sat together in the hospital room, their daughter sleeping peacefully in Nathan's arms, Victoria realized that their story had come full circle. What had begun as a contract marriage born of desperation had become the greatest love story of their lives. "So," Nathan said softly, "what do you think? Are you ready for the next chapter?" Victoria looked at her husband, at their daughter, at the life they had built together against all odds. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," she said, "as long as we're together." Nathan smiled, the same smile that had made her fall in love with him all those months ago. "Forever and always, Mrs. Cross." "Forever and always," Victoria agreed, and as the morning light streamed through the hospital window, illuminating their small family, Victoria knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning the end.